Coming up on iPads in the classroom, it's some cool history apps. Hi, my name is Guy Trainin, and this is iPads in the Classroom from TechEdge, and today I'm going to talk about some cool history apps. And we're going to actually start with the app for the History Channel. Now, if you've watched the History Channel, it has all kinds of shows, and most of them are not actually about history, but about other things, so you have to be selective. But here's an example of something you can see on the History Channel app that can actually be useful. And this is a show called The Ultimate Guide to Presidents, and what I actually like about it is this is not the full show, but these are short clips that are teasers of sorts. But what they allow you to do is, if you want to introduce a discussion about the president, you can actually use that clip to give an very short overview to get some interest going and then to launch into the lesson. Usually we don't really have time to show whole episodes, but if kids see the beginning of an episode or the overview of an episode, they might really become interested in watching the whole show, and you can recommend that they do that at home. So, for example, a show about Truman and Eisenhower, and we can play that video.
Truman and Eisenhower, the first time they met was when Eisenhower came back to the United States after the victory in Europe. And the two men had this warm, I'd say formal, but very effective partnership.
So what you get here are these short overviews. You can see this one is about 2.5 minutes. Most of them are about at that length, so between 2 and 3 minutes. So you can show that quickly in class as an introduction to a president. You get to hear some historians, you get to see some authentic photographs from that era, and so it's a very good way to start thinking about how you can use History Channel without taking over a whole lesson, and we often don't have time to watch whole shows. There are some other shows, and my guess is as the History Channel develops more shows around different topics, those will show up there as well. So this is History Channel, and it is a great app. The second app I'm going to talk about is part of two apps that come from the National Archives. So both of these apps obviously tap into documents, historical documents. So when we talk about primary documents, you can go to the National Archives and have this access to a very rich array of historical documents. Let's start with today's document. Every day, the archives have a document that pertains to something that happened in history around that time, not exactly that time. It is not always a written document, it's often a photograph, and as a result, there's a rich access to historical documents. Now, the fact that there is a document of the day does not mean that you cannot look for other documents, so you can actually use the search function to find other documents that were used. In this case, today's document is opening day of 1961 baseball season with President Kennedy throwing the ball. So this is from the National Archives. The second one from the National Archives is a lot more flexible, and it's called DocsTeach. Now, in DocsTeach, you actually can, as a teacher, create your own task for students, or you can use tasks designed by others. But either way, you can actually design instruction around a specific document, and you can see that you can have here enter a classroom code. So if you as a teacher created a specific task for your classroom, your students can come in, you will give them a code, and then they will use that code to go in and do a task. And the task is not just looking at a specific document, but you can actually add your questions, your directions, and guidelines. So if we want, I'll show you some examples of documents and the questions that go around them. So it goes by category or by era, and a letter to President Lincoln, And the activity loads, and here are the directions. Here, read the letter to the president and the document that followed the letters each time. Decide whether that document would have freed this enslaved woman or not. And you see, there's a chain of documents with the original document coming up. This is the letters. And if you click on details, it actually is also transcribed. So if you can't read it, or it's hard to read, especially on a smaller screen, you can get the full impact. The last one I want to talk about comes from somewhere completely different, and it's called Gallery HD is the name on it. It's also called Soviet Posters, and this is a collection of dozens and dozens of posters from the Soviet era. And when we think about primary documents, again, many of us think first about the written documents, but actually posters and propaganda are fantastic documents to explore as part of history. So if you're teaching about 20th century history, this is probably a great source to think about looking at primary documents. And so we have here selection by era, and here are some examples. This is fight against social evils, and you can see how these really reflect the ethos and the thinking of the regime at the time. So today we talked about quite a few history apps. Some of them are about primary documents. The other one is the History Channel. It allows you to have some intros, interesting intros into different topics depending on what the History Channel is offering at the time. Right now, great stuff about mankind and presidents, probably other things to come. And we'll see you next time on iPads in the Classroom.